Welcome to this tutorial, Create a Calculation View of Type Cube in the SAP HANA Cloud. In this tutorial, we will see how to use the SAP Business Application Studio to create a graphical calculation view of Type Cube. You will learn how to create a calculation view using the SAP Business Application Studio, and you will learn how to join data from multiple calculation views. The prerequisites for this tutorial is that you have completed the previous steps in this group, the group named Create Calculation Views in SAP HANA Cloud. And in particular, we need the anonymized view from the previous tutorial and that you've created and loaded data into the performance table in the tutorial before that. In this exercise, we're going to combine data from multiple views that we've created in the previous exercises together in one new calculation view. All right, we are returning to the same project that we've been working on throughout this series of tutorials. And we're going to go to the Models folder in SRC again. And we're going to use the palette find command to create SAP HANA database artifact. Going to give myself a little more screen space there again. And what we want to do in the SRC models folder for HANA Cloud, we want to create a calculation view. We're going to name it, what are we going to name it? Performance salaries. Salaries. And we want to use a type of cube. And no, we're not going to use a star join. So once again, I'll go ahead and create that artifact. And that's our first step. Now, we want to begin editing this artifact. So let's open Performance Salaries. There we are. And I'm going to size things up a little bit here. Myself a little more space. There we are. And we want to begin this time not with a simple projection on a single table, but we want to start with a join. So I'm going to drag the join node onto the canvas, line it up there. There we go. And I want to add a data source to my join. So I'm going to start here. And we want to start with the anonymized view from the previous tutorial. So that was V salaries. So I'll just start typing that. There we are. There's V salaries. And add that to our view. And now let's add a second data source to the same join node. And what do we want to do here? We want to add the performance. There we are, performance. And we'll finish. And once it loads, there we have our two objects, our two views that we're going to join together. Now, in order to configure the join, what we want to do is make sure that you have the join node selected, which you probably do from the previous step. And we want to create a join condition. Now, these both have an ID column, and that is the matching data between these two data sets. So select the ID, and you get the little arrow. Just drag it over to the ID of the other object, and there we are. We have a many-to-many connection. But that's not the cardinality that we want. We know that we have the same unique values in both of these. So we'll go ahead and change the cardinality to a 1-to-1. That optimize the performance for the way that our data is structured. Okay, that's all we need to do on the join itself. We'll keep everything else at the default values. And we'll go on to the mapping tab. Now, what this is doing is we actually want to add all the columns to the output, but we only want the ID column once. So what we'll do here is I'll add all the salary data. And then I'll come here and I'll just select these 4 columns And I'll just drag them over here. And it added those as well. There we are. We now have our join node complete with the join the way we want it, and we've selected our columns that we want in the output. Now we need to connect it up to the aggregation node. Just grab the little arrow, drag it, and we are connected. And that completes this step. In the next step, we can configure the semantics layer. But first, we're going to start here with aggregation. And we just need to make sure all the columns are surfaced up from there. So once again, we'll double click on the join, and that will add them all to our output. Now we can come up to the semantics layer. And once again, we've got measures on ID and start year, and we don't want that. We want to change those to attributes. So the only measures we should have are salary, evaluation. Actually, we don't want reports to either, do we? So let's change that to an attribute. And then satisfaction index. So 3 aggregates. And instead of sums, for our purposes of this calculation view, it makes more sense to have an average. So let's go ahead and change this to an average salary, average rating, and average satisfaction index. There we are. Save it. And that completes this step. So now we're ready to build and deploy save and deploy our content. It's been auto-saving, so it's all good there. I can see I have a pending deployment for content in my source folder down here in models. Let's just go ahead and do the whole project though. Deploy for the whole module. So I'm going to click the deploy button. And we see the deploy log. Sending our one new artifact into the database, which is our performance salaries, and it was successful. Very good. That's what I would hope would happen. Now we can go ahead and test this out. We want to open the HDI container, which will launch the Database Explorer in another tab. Now, this is a calculation view. So once we get here to our HDI container, we can see those under column views. Close this stuff from before. Go to column views, and there is our performance salaries. And we can go ahead and say open data. And unlike, when we were just browsing the data of the table, we can get to that. If we go to raw data, we can see the raw records. We have this a nice analysis tool as well. So from the analysis tool, we want to drag the T level into the label access, and then the evaluation rating we want to take to our value access, and then it will graph the data for us. Now I'm going to blur this out in the video because the validation in the tutorial wants you to tell the outcome of this evaluation rating. And I don't want to give away the answer without you doing the exercise, but know that these are the steps to complete this tutorial. And with that, we have come to the end of this tutorial and this tutorial group. We have seen different ways to create calculation views using the SAP Business Application Studio. We have, in this particular tutorial, created a calculation view of type cube that created a join between 2 existing database artifacts. And then we've seen how to deploy that into the database and use the analysis tool of the data preview to drill in and look at the data visually and in different ways to test what we've just deployed.